And what we're going to do now is start the basics class. Tonight's basics class is on Skew. And Skew is an insane little thing that never existed prior to 1987. In 1987, we had this weird phenomenon called the crash. We fell 10% the week before the crash. And then on that Monday, Black Monday, we fell 22% in one day, which is a huge move. If you think about the fact that in the crash in 1929, the market was only down 25% that year. Here we fell 22, 23% in a day. Now, how options were priced prior to the crash in 1987 is they were all priced off a normal distribution, meaning volatility at every single strike was the exact same. And all the options filled up underneath the normal distribution curve perfectly. As a matter of fact, somebody would ask, what's the price of the 500 call? Well, you could price it based on what's the volatility of any single option there, and it'll be priced at the same volatility as every other option. There was no skew. But when the crash occurred, people became more appreciative of risk. They finally realized, hey, the market can fall 10, 20, more than 20% in a day. And they started getting a more of appreciation for how to hedge that risk, especially anyone owning stocks who saw their portfolios drop 10% on Friday and then on Monday another 25%. They started thinking either I get out of the stock market or I learn these option things to buy insurance. And they started learning the options game, the most beautiful game in the world. What happened though is it began to create an artificial demand. Most people in this world are long stock. And so if they're playing an option, they're usually going to be buying a put to hedge that stock. An artificial demand for puts started coming in. As a matter of fact, floor traders, even people with market maker margins like myself, started becoming limited on how much risk they could take. The week before the crash, I could sell 50,000 puts, and my clearing firm would have never said anything. The week after the crash, they started looking at my risk down 10%, down 1 standard deviation, down 2 standard deviations. They were looking at all kinds of different ways to make sure that I no longer could go for more than twice the equity in my account, a consideration that was never in place before. And so the artificial demand to buy puts, even if you don't need them, came. And the best way to subsidize the purchase of those puts is by selling calls. So you take this normal distribution curve that we were working under perfectly and start skewing up the price of the puts. The puts became a little bit higher, and because they were selling calls to pay for those puts, there was an artificial supply forcing the price of the calls down. People who never wanted to limit their upside by selling a call started deciding, hey, you know what? It might be worth limiting my upside to a little bit to offset the cost of these puts. And so we came up with the skew that we're currently working under. Now, recently, the purpose behind this little basics class is people have been asking in our pod class when we're doing unbalanced condors, unbalanced butterflies, broken wing butterflies, etc. Why is there a certain time where I'm doing more unbalanced condors or BWBs, etc., than others? And as a matter of fact, I've said a couple times in recent pod classes that the skew is evaporating or collapsing, and so I'm not going to be doing any unbalanced today. Other times I'll say, despite volatility being low, the skew is high, so we can still do unbalanced condors. And this has caused some confusion to the people who are a little bit new to skew and say, what do you mean by that? How does skew help or hurt these various trades? The best way to understand it is to just look at it from a visual perspective. When we take this graph of skew, we see that the dark green area, because of skew, has the price of these vertical spreads. Now, let's say each one of these vertical bars can be an individual price of an option, or it can be the price of a vertical spread. We could say that, for example, this is the 4,900 put, or we can say this 4,900, 48.95 put spread, and we'll call it $2. And then this is the 48.95 90 put spread of 180, etc. in the price of the put spreads, or the individual puts are going down in value. Because of skew, you can see where these compasses in the light shaded area are dramatically higher than the dark shaded area because of skew. A vertical spread or a put that would normally cost 35 cents is now trading at 80 cents. So we're going to want to sell that. It's artificially inflated. It's not based on its probability of getting there. It's based on artificial demand. So we want to sell something. If something's worth 35 cents and we can sell it at 80 cents, that's a great sale. To hedge it, we'll go out and buy something that is not as overinflated, or we'll buy something half as many times, and that's where the unbalanced come in, the unbalanced butterfly, the unbalanced condor, or the BWB. So let's say we go out and buy a vertical spread with puts that's closer to at the money, and this vertical spread should normally be trading for $1.30. Because of skew, it's a little bit more. It's $1.50. So it's trading for 20 cents more than it should be. But the options we're selling are even more dramatically overpriced. So on a low skew, which is the dark shaded area, you see the unbalanced condor is going for a 60-cent debit. If I'm buying one spread for $1.30 and selling two spreads at 35 cents, that's a net debit of 60 cents. As the skew increases, independent of volatility, the VIX can be on the 13, 16, 19 right here. It doesn't matter. This is just skew. You see that the vertical spread that we would normally pay $1.34 is going for $1.50, but the tails we are selling twice as often is now going for 80 cents. And instead of paying 60 cents for this unbalanced, we can do it for a 10-cent credit. The higher the skew, the cheaper this unbalanced spread will get. As skew comes in, because no one's afraid of a big move anymore, it costs more money to get an unbalanced on. And that's how we've been using skew on our unbalanced spreads. We'll do another basics class in next week's pod.